This is All Things Caregiving from Breathing Spaces.
Hi, my name is Cindy Mariner. Welcome to another episode of All Things Caregiving. I am here today with my co-host and team member, Cindy Gum. Cindy,
Hi,
welcome.
thank you.
And we are extremely excited today to have with us Jessica Stokes. Jessica is a writer, author, speaker, educator. Jessica is a phenomenal human being who is well versed in the role of caregiving. So this is an honor for us to have you here today, Jessica. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to get to spend some time with you all this afternoon. So I started my caregiving journey. Um, I fell into it, really. I suppose if I really check in with myself, my mom and aunt were caregivers of my grandparents, and I was in my early 20s, and they were caregiving my grandparents, and I played a support role for the two of them, my mom and my aunt, and I shared some responsibilities. So that was really, it was a taste for me of an introduction to caregiving. Certainly at the time, I had no idea that 30 years later, or less than that, 20 years later, I would be supporting both the passing and the journey for both my mom and my aunt as they navigated Alzheimer's and both passed of Alzheimer's. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when I was in my mid 30s. She was on a 13-year journey from diagnosis to her passing. During a critical, felt like growing up time for me and also for her. She was in her mid 60s. She was 63, 64 when she was diagnosed. And it was shocking for all of us, from everything from how we discovered it. I was very, very close to my mom in my 20s and 30s, my whole life, but we had become really very good friends during that time. And I was talking to her every day. I was a young mom and I was going through a divorce, and she was my rock. And there's a couple really key conversations with her in which she just blanked out completely. And it was so unlike, it was so out of character. And several weeks later, I talked to my dad and I said, I have a weird question. When you talk to mom, does she sometimes kind of just space out? And he confirmed, and we had this realization that we were both seeing some of the same behaviors. We were extraordinarily lucky. We caught my mom's diagnosis so very early, which allowed us really to navigate the entire journey as caregivers in a very with a nice emphasis and eye. Her perspective, or her all people with a disease handled it differently. My mom's was not one that wanted to talk about her diagnosis. She was very private and quiet about it. So there was a lot of dad and I, as dad was truly the primary caregiver and I was really his support. But what happened was I really had to, my journey of having to step into supporting him in a way that was really making some difficult decisions, specifically for my mom. The big twist and turn in this whole journey, my mom's 13-year diagnosis was matched by my aunt's diagnosis to passing was only 4 years versus 13. So it was felt fast and furious, and we navigated it in a completely different way. I also was supported my cousins through that transition. And then the one that's and kind of good thing I've been around the block, I guess, is that just recently in the past year, 6 months, really, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So my dad is a totally different scenario. My dad's in his early 80s. He, unlike my mom, who didn't want to talk about anything, my dad wants to talk about everything. And all the things we learned the first time around has given us some skills and a different way of relating to it, that has put us in front of the pieces of it that were fearful or scary before is completely different.
I'm curious I mean, you've had a lot of experience here, and especially in this one area. And I'm wondering, as you reflect on the big picture, what caught you off guard? What surprised you? And what do you wish you had known then that you know now?
Good questions.
Great questions. The hugest takeaway for me in all of this is, as caregivers or as children of aging parents or of loved ones, it's so important to let us see them for who they are, not see the disease. So one of the challenges with my mom and what caught me off guard, the whole thing caught us off guard. She was not the type of person that would seem to get an illness that was going to be this very, very lingering long illness. She was really healthy, and she was very, she took care of her health. She was a healthy person before it was hip to be a healthy person. And I got angry. Like, one of my first responses was really, like, I was mad. I was mad at her. I was mad at the disease. I was seeing the disease. I was having a hard time seeing her. So a huge transition for me, and I dive into this deeply in my book, is how do you see the person? How do you let the person still be them? Specifically with something that is a loss of memory. It's so easy to see the loss and not see who their essence really is. At the end of the day, they're still that person. It's just a different version of them. And I think it's easy in dementia, to dismiss them and say, oh, we already lost them, or they're gone. We certainly lost versions of my mom many times, but she was still there. It was just a different way of relating to it. And that was a huge aha for me of seeing her, letting her still be there, and her whole life, not just the lens of the illness and the disease. As I navigate this now with my dad, it gives me a different perspective, because the benefit is I know what I know. The benefit's also I know what I know, right? So I know where we're going. I also know where we're going, which means I can, and being present. So it's forced me really to be present and love every single moment we have. It's allowed me to be more patient and to stop and be present, which I think is not just a lesson in caregiving, it's a lesson in life, that if we can stop and be present, it's the same, as we're all aging, right? And we all wish we looked like we looked when we were 20, but we don't. If we could have stopped and given ourselves permission to love who we were when we were 20, we could also then love that view and that person that we were, and also love ourselves more.
Jessica, I have a question. So what I'm hearing is that at first you thought you were angry at the person, at your mom, and then you realized that no, I'm angry at what happened to her and happened to me because of that. But I love her. So you made a separation there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird combination. I was angry because, she wasn't there the way, like, we were talking every single day, and then I wasn't, because she couldn't connect with me. Right. And so she felt gone. Like, I felt I lost my mom.
And you did. You lost a version of her.
I lost a version of her. Yeah. And I also had then fallen into this role of, and partly my dad needed it. It was this very, like, I need to help with the house. I need to fix the things. My mom got really cluttery. She was hanging on to things she didn't need. So they lived up in the mountains from me. So they lived about 3 hours from me. And so I would go up and I would clean the house, or my mom she had been the primary caretaker of their house. And so, she stopped cooking, she stopped doing laundry. And so I would go up and help with these very tasky kind of things. And I would get angry. I was angry that I had to do it. And I was mad at them, like mad that my dad couldn't do it, mad that my mom didn't want to do it anymore, mad that I was doing it. So there's a lot of like frustration wrapped up and I wanted to help, right? So I was like mad at all the like stuff, and I wasn't just being present and seeing where she was. If I could go back in time, I would have still gotten the stuff down, but I didn't necessarily have to be the one doing that. Like, or being there cleaning and then really stopping and there was moments, but really being present for her and seeing her. And there were some breakthrough moments. There was like, the moment that we were looking through her jewelry and organizing her jewelry, and she was like, looked up and was like, thank you so much for helping me. There was some just really gems of moments, but I was so focused on the task, not focused on the person and seeing her.
Wow. So focus.
So if I could go back in time, I would have been more patient with myself and her.
I wonder how many of us in the role of caregiver have, because I'm going back in my own mind to my own caregiving days as you're saying that. I wonder how many caregivers really do that, because you're angry at the situation you're in. I don't want to say it's expected, but it's not abnormal to be in that thought pattern.
Yeah. And it's also hard to stop. And I mean, this sounds so cliche. It's hard to stop and smell the roses.
Yes.
Like it's hard to stop and realize, I mean, again, right? That sounds so cliche.
No.
And the kind of hit for me, and again, I explore this in my book, is that my mom and my aunt, same aunt with the past, also with Alzheimer's, had built a stone labyrinth in the backyard of my parents' house. So it was a walking labyrinth and a walking path. And when I was going up there so much, I started walking it. I was walking it with her, but I was also at one point like started walking it by myself. And I had this like massive aha of, oh, there's also another specific, the other specific story was I found this box of letters that my mom had written to my grandma when she left home, when she was left home after high school, and my grandma had saved these letters. And I found these letters and I felt like I found my mom's voice. Like I heard my mom's voice in those letters, and I stopped and read them. And that combined with the labyrinth and having this like activity that forced me to stop and do something that's incredibly mindful, helped the switch for me of, okay, she's, her voice is still in those letters. She is still here. It's just that different version of her. And really made me start to be more present and mindful, stop and smell the roses, and engage in a different way. It didn't happen. It didn't happen well into the second half of her. We didn't know, we had no idea. But we did luckily have another few years in which I was able to be more present.
Okay.
In hindsight, of course, I would have liked to be more.
Always. Now, how about your dad? Is he still living up in the house? Is he living with you?
No, my dad's, we'll see where the journey goes, but my dad is very, we knew my mom didn't exactly want to go into any kind of facility or assisted space. But it was the right decision for all of us. And actually, one of the most peaceful times of her entire journey was the last few years of her life. She was really angry. She had gotten really frustrated and angry, and she really settled in the last part of her life. My dad is very clear. He's staying in his house. So we are making and we are navigating a lot of choices that will be possible. So because he's so vocal about it, we're able to have really good conversations, both he and I, as well as with his caregiving team. There's different resources, and we'll hopefully be able to navigate so he can be in his house the entire time. And he is adamant of dying in the house. So
that's a really good question, because so many face the decision later on.
Yeah.
When you've said, oh yeah, Dad, well, and then maybe they get violent toward the end. That
right.
can happen. You are presented with a circumstance that says to you, he can't stay in his home.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Is he able to talk to you about that now, so that you could say,
yeah.
Like, what happens if, or can he even navigate that?
So there's this goes back to that, like seeing the person for who they are. And as we navigate caregiving as children of, and this is actually everyone. And these are conversations that my young adult children, I'm starting to have with them, because I think that there's a lot of fear and a lot of unknown associated with all things that have to do with dying. If it's, if we want to be cremated or not, what kind of funeral we want, what kind of party we want, to where's all the money, to who's in charge, to all those things. And and people have put a lot of blocks around that. And so when Mom died, Dad and I started having a lot of conversations about this. And it was really clear of what his lines in the sand are. We've had some really interesting conversations of compassionate care, death with dignity. We live in Colorado. Colorado is a state that supports that. However, when you get an Alzheimer's diagnosis, all that, it negates it all. So we have had some very candid conversations with his doctors and with one another of what are those lines in the sand and what happens. Violence, I think, is probably the biggest, right? Because I think almost anything that you can navigate, and some of the challenging ones is, Dad said, when he can't do some toileting activities, he's pretty sure he's ready to check out. I really hope, and all hope, that something happens and he has cardio stuff too. I hope it's a heart attack.
It's hard to get out of a body, he want out, but the body's not willing to shut down. And it's really hard for those that have taken really good care of themselves. And the mind goes, but the body is still quite intact. It's a hard time leaving.
So there are still some big questions, and there is some, we are ahead of the game in the sense of we've navigated different kinds of support. It's Alzheimer's is crazy, right? There's so many. I try not to get attached to the statistics because it's so overwhelming. The numbers are so big. But there's so many people that there is gonna be a time either, and you're right, it's hard to get out of the body. So are we going to have the right abilities to make decisions to help him get out of the body? And we don't know. And so at some point that might mean that he'll probably listen to this at some point. So I have to, which is fine. He can hear me say this. At some point, he's not going to remember his body. He's not going to remember it. I will.
Yeah.
but he won't. So in the event, if it comes down to that, and he feels strongly that he wants to be remembering until he's here. So let's hope it's a heart attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much
It's the
uncertainty.
weirdest
Yeah.
conversation.
Boy, well, yeah, I love your transparency and your candidness, because this is
Yeah.
where the caregivers, they're facing this too.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this is the real stuff. And we've got to be able to talk to each other at least about these things that others, they're not having to deal with, what is not only going to get worse, but it's going to get worse before it gets a lot worse.
Right.
Yeah.
The reality we live with this kind of
Yeah.
a diagnosis or situation. I really
Yeah.
admire your perseverance, your courage, and your strength through so many iterations. And bless you, really. This has been an amazing journey. I want you to mention your book, if you would, because
Yes.
there
Sure.
are people that
Yeah.
would be interested.
Please.
I have a copy of it for those
Okay,
watching.
show it.
So
Yeah, there we go.
the title is Seeking Clarity in the Labyrinth, A Daughter's Journey
Oh.
Through Alzheimer's.
Wow, beautiful book cover.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
it's available on Amazon. It's available on barnesandnoble.com. And of course, if anyone reaches out directly to me, my website is jessicastokesauthor.com. You can contact me through there, and I'm happy to send signed copies.
Perfect.
And I have written some about my dad. I'm actually starting the process of writing a parallel book that will be about the journey with my dad and what happens from that, 2.0 and what and then what you deal with and how you navigate it, and how we navigate it, and how we can hold our loved ones in heart and love and integrity, and ensure that their needs are being met, because at the end they need to be able to decide too how they journey in their illness and disease.
Yeah. Jessica, you have been this has been such a wonderful conversation to have. And as I said previously, all caregivers go through this to some level, and so many go through it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to hear someone else's journey just makes such a difference. It opens the brick up of our heart to know that we're not alone, to know that those thoughts that we're going through, not everybody, but most of us have gone through those same thoughts. So being able to be open in this has been a tremendous gift. I really honor you on your journey, and thank you so much for being part of this today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jessica.
And we'll have you back. Get that other book written. Let's have you back.
Love it.
Absolutely.
All right. Wonderful. Cindy, thank you as always for being with us. We'll make sure that we've got links up for your books as well.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, Jessica. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
This has been All Things Caregiving from Breathing Spaces.